Hello, welcome everyone to Southeast Iowa Union Sports Talk Live after a little 2-week hiatus. Not really, it's a 1-week hiatus, but we haven't been here in 2 weeks.
Feels like a long time.
Feels like it's been a long time since we've been sitting here. We had a Thanksgiving special a couple weeks ago, and last week we were out, and we're back in today. So everyone, if you're watching this, you already know this, but it's on Washington Live's YouTube page, Washington Live's Facebook page, Mount Pleasant Live's Facebook page, Fairfield Live's Facebook page, and we're also on Spotify audio and video. We're Southeast Iowa Union Sports Talk, where myself, Andy Krutzinger, sits here with my co-host, Hunter Muller. And Nick Steffens is on the ones and twos over there. And we just talk a little bit of high school sports and life and college sports a little bit as far as...
some banter.
So, yeah, a little banter back and forth. And we have a new season that we're embarking on. This is really the first show since winter sports has really gotten underway,
this is the
right?
First time we won't talk about football, but let's just put it that way.
This is the first time you'll
First time we'll talk about basketball.
Football. Yeah, I know, that's right. You know, yes. So if you are not many people mute the football talk. Some people used to listen to the football talk during fall and then turn it off.
I know.
But now we got basketball, wrestling, bowling, all that stuff throughout the year. Basketball has really kicked off, and I guess I'm first up. So we're talking a little local basketball. Last night was a non-conference day with the Southeast Conference teams. Mm-hmm. I was physically in Mount Pleasant. And the Mount Pleasant girls basketball team is in the winner's circle after some troubles in their first 4 games. The Panthers lost their first 4 games. I think they lost to Pella by 12 or 13 points. And then they lost 3 straight games by single digits. The last 2, I think they had the lead in late. And so last night they played Oskaloosa. Oskaloosa came in 2-0. And Mount Pleasant got out to a big start. They're up 21-9 at halftime. Oskaloosa came all the way back to tie at 24-24, and Mount Pleasant pretty much rolled from that point on 41-32. You know what happened, Hunter, was Mount Pleasant blew the lead, and they had a couple girls in foul trouble, and Tristan Scholl, their point guard, one of their best players, was out. She should be coming back soon, I hear. And so they were a little shorthanded, and Oskaloosa was able to battle back, took that thing from down 21-9 at halftime to tied it at 24-24, and with less than 1 second left, I believe Andrea Lopriata got fouled on a three-pointer, which the Oskaloosa fans weren't very happy about, and made all 3 free throws. It was 27-24 at the end of the third quarter. Mm-hmm. She went on, she scored 10 in the fourth, and Mount Pleasant, as I said, just kind of rolled from that point on. So Andrea Lopriata, 24 points and 17 rebounds last night, another great outing for her. She puts up those kind of Nikola Jokic-esque stats all the time with the points and rebounds. Kate Schimmelfigan had a huge game last night. 11 points, hit a couple of big threes when they needed her to in the first half. Head coach Kurt Watson said that she has played her 2 best games in her high school career, the last 2 games, which she's been playing since sophomore, so that's pretty big for them.
Yeah, it is, and just talking about her, we obviously know that she's one of the best players in the area. I mean, obviously, I remember we were both kind of talking about that crazy stat line, that she put up last year. But for Mount Pleasant, it's kind of like looking at them, and coming into the season was about how are they going to replace some of those key seniors they had last year. Jaden Brumbaugh was like one of their top rebounders. Kenna Lamb was kind of a 3-point shooter, and I would say they don't have looking at their team this year, I would say they don't have somebody that can just knock it down from 3, which Kenna Lamb kind of was that girl that kind of did that. So, but early season, still some time to figure some things out and see if the Panthers keep winning.
I covered them also a week and a half ago or whatever when they played a ton one. One thing that they have faced, which a lot of high school teams with players who score a lot of points face, is they get box and one. Lopriata gets box and one. We see the box and one against a lot of our players, especially on the girls. Ella Kissel from Waco gets it pretty much every game. And they leave everybody so open on the perimeter that sometimes you get the ball. And even if you are a shooter, and Mount Pleasant has a couple of kids where I'd say shooting is, that's their main strength or whatever is outside shots, although they haven't hit very many the last couple of years. And it's just like sometimes you're so wide open. Mm-hmm. So last night they did a much better job of not taking every shot. And the offense worked a little better. So Mount Pleasant girls 1-4 now, and they got a big game in Keokuk on Friday. So it was important for them to get a win.
Yeah.
And you were at a doubleheader last night. Washington did not have an easy one.
No, they did not. It seems like anytime Pella comes down to play any of our Southeast Conference teams, it's always it's always a good fight between both of them. And like you said, was in Washington last night. Pella came down. One of the craziest kind of stats I was looking, ahead of the game time is on the last 2 games for the Washington girls versus Pella. Pella has outscored the Demons 124-30. That was the last 2 times that they've played. This one, Washington gave them quite the fight. They ended up losing to Pella 51-41, but still a great game. A lot of improvement shown from last year. I believe it was 66-18. Was
Something
last
like
year's
that.
last year's game.
It might have been higher than that. I think it was 71.
Yeah. Something along those lines. But story of the night was they came out. Washington took the lead 4-2 early, but that was the only time that they would lead in it. And the biggest difference in the game was Washington just could not get the ball in the bucket in the first quarter. It was 15-4 in Pella's favor in that first quarter. The rest of the way, the last 3 quarters, Washington actually outscored the Dutch there, but it was just neck and neck. So neck and neck for those final 3 quarters. It wasn't they didn't outscore them by enough to complete the comeback. But looking at Washington, we kind of talked about this on occasion. Is they lost 1 to 2 seniors last year.
They did.
They bring a lot of girls that know what it takes to win, and then they bring in a great freshman class. They got some great freshmen starting for them. They play really well. Washington 2-1 on the season. Right now you lose to a pretty good Pella team. I mean, what more can you ask for Washington? Looking forward with it. They got like I mentioned, the young talent, and they got the girls that have been there, done that. So they seem to be working well, and that's kind of something Coach Rugg kind of talked about. Is these girls, they want it, which is always important.
Yeah, they seem to have they got depth. I thought at the end of last year, the Washington girls had a couple games where they showed it was gonna, they were gonna be able to compete with some of the higher up teams, and they would have a lot of games where they would stick with the team for a half or 3 quarters, and they couldn't quite get the offense. But you said that Alex Murphy was pretty much unstoppable last night when she's in the post, right?
Yeah, pretty much. I mean, it didn't happen a lot, but like whenever she got the ball in the post, she would do a little turnaround kind of hook shot, or turn around kind of jumper off the backboard, and about every time it went in.
Yeah.
And I was kind of surprised that she didn't do it more, but one of the big things is that Washington was really kind of aggressive on the offensive end. They just couldn't get it to fall, but they got Pella into some foul trouble. Some of the starters got taken out, and they were able to kind of take advantage of that, but the shots just weren't falling on the offensive end. They played great defense, but sometimes you're going to have that, and it's early yet. So.
And you saw Washington I guess you could talk about the boys' game against Pella, but real quick, back to the girls. You've seen Washington a couple times now because they beat Fairfield. That was the first time in a long time the Washington beat Fairfield last weekend, right?
Yeah, it was 62-32 Washington, and that was the first win for the Demons against Washington in 16 straight games, and I believe I can double check quick, but I think that dates back to 2014.
Yeah.
So it's been a little while. Big win. That's something Coach Rugg talked about after the game. But in that one, Washington brought full court pressure the entire time. Obviously, Fairfield, they had that great senior class. And they don't have as many ball handlers bring the ball up court this year. Fairfield's got I think 2 seniors.
Yeah, they're inexperienced. They're probably the most.
They're young. Yeah.
Of the 6 big school teams we cover, they're definitely the most inexperienced because they had pretty much all seasons. Savannah Hollander played a little bit last year, but a lot of
Ashland
all the seniors and Ashland Lisk.
But in that one, Washington just brought the pressure all game long. Was able to create a lot of easy layups off the full court press and got a bunch of easy buckets and just kind of kept racking it up in that one. And they get their first win against Fairfield, and like I said, since 2014 now.
Yeah, and they got Burlington on Friday night, but that's a game they took last year, so they could potentially be 2-0 in the conference.
Yeah, which is huge for them because when like I said, talking to Coach Rugg, that was kind of one of the biggest things is the girls always, when I talked to him last year, he said, they're always consistently fighting. So, now we're starting to see that kind of pay off into wins here in the early season at least.
And then boys-wise, last night, you texted me last night and said, what's the record for 3-pointers in a game? And I thought, awesome, Ethan Patterson must be lighting it up, I think. And you said, no, Pella couldn't miss last night, right?
Yeah, so the Pella came down and beat Washington 77-50 last night. And it just right from the jump, you can tell it wasn't going to be Washington's night. It was definitely Pella's night because Pella came out and hit 4 straight threes to open the game, back-to-back threes, took a 14-0 lead when that run was all said and done. And it was just something that, Washington can never come back. They ended up hitting 6 in the first quarter, 6 in the second, so they had 12 threes by the end of the first half. Check and double check here. We'll see what they led. I can remember.
Yeah, what they...
But they were up... I'm going to find my notes here.
You do the
They led
paper, I did some.
46-25 at the half, and the closest Washington was able to get back within 2 was about 18. So it seemed like every time Washington got any sort of momentum, here came the 3 ball for Dallas. So tough loss for the Demons, but they've got a ton of winnable games left. Obviously, we talked about Fairfield and Washington playing, and Washington edged one out there in Fairfield, 71-67 last week. It came down to the wire. It was kind of the traditional battle we expect from the
every
Southeast
time
Conference team. Yeah, it seems
those
like,
2 teams really lately have been.
But it played out exactly how we planned it, and came down to a couple possessions, and Washington got a big steal. Ethan Patterson got a big steal on JJ Lane late, got an easy layup, ended up hitting a free throw a couple seconds later, getting fouled, had to foul him, and he delivered from the free throw line late, and a couple possessions in that one, it could be the other way, but went in Washington's favor, but now they're 1-2. So, but like I keep saying, plenty of season left. There's plenty of things to play out. So,
what I've seen so far in the Southeast Conference for boys, because I covered the one Mount Pleasant boys game, and they beat Fort Madison. They hadn't beat Fort Madison in 3 or 4 tries. And Fort Madison was one of the top teams last year. They lost a lot of seniors.
Yep.
And Mount Pleasant in the second half ran them out of the gym. And they beat Fort Madison by 20-something points. Peyton Higgins had a big game last week against them. It seems like the 3 area teams the big schools we cover, Fairfield, Washington, and Mount Pleasant, they have to be right neck and neck with each other every single game this year. Because I couldn't even, if you would ask me to power rank how they've looked early in the season, I think Fairfield would have been the favorite because of how much they had coming back. But there's a lot of talent in those 3, so that'll be fun. And I think Burlington will be a team that is right there with them in the conference. Fort Madison maybe had an off night. We'll find out because Fairfield plays Fort Madison on Friday. But we'll see. We'll see if Keokuk's improved. Otherwise, it could be Mount Pleasant, Washington, Fairfield, and Burlington so far.
What's funny about Burlington too is it felt like that they were the one team that no one talked about, and they were the ones that made it to state.
Yeah, they did because they had a little slump in the middle of the season.
I know. So Eric, I can't think it really shows. It feels like whatever sport we talk about, it seems like any team could.
Southeast Conference,
pretty much any team it's a toss up every year.
It didn't used to be like that. When I first started covering basketball, Keokuk and Fort Madison were the best 2 teams. That was 2014-ish. I'm trying to think of the players. Miles Winsine for Fort Madison and Johnny Dahl for Keokuk. They're out of college by now. But
my class.
Your class right there. Hunter was one of my first athletes, fun fact. But Keokuk and Fort Madison, I think 1 or 2 years in a row, they split the conference and only lost 1 game, right? Then Mount Pleasant had a big run with Sartorius and Mignani and them. And they went 3 years in a row without losing a conference game. So, and then the year after they graduated, Fairfield went undefeated in the conference. So the champion of the Southeast Conference in boys basketball hadn't lost more than 1 game in 7 years, and now all of a sudden it's just a dogfight, which is really fun. So it didn't used to be like this, but it's going to be like this again this year. So also a fun fact about the Washington boys is that they're one of our teams that have 3 brothers playing, the triplets. And
funny story about that.
Oh yeah, you gotta.
I was interviewing
AJ.
I believe, can't remember which one it was, but anyway.
Yeah.
But I was interviewing one of them. But
same hair.
I had asked Coach Stark. I was like, hey, can you grab whichever 3 I said. I was like, because they'll probably walk out by each other, and I won't be able to tell which one.
Yep, that's right.
Yeah,
that's funny. Well, Winfield Mount Union, we'll talk about that in the roundup a little bit. They have 3 brothers playing now, so we're getting into the. Once you get 3 brothers, it's kind of cool. But obviously,
they're
all
twins.
The 6s,
It's
the 6s all look the exact same. So anyway, that's a little teaser because we're going to talk about the small schools here when we come back from commercial break. So stick with us. We got more basketball on the way. It was a pretty packed night, and we haven't even gotten ankle deep in it yet. So stick with us.
Federation Bank is a locally owned bank providing award-winning customer service. We believe that we are more than just a federation of banks, but a federation of communities, serving Brighton, Richland, Wellman, and Washington, Iowa. Federation Bank's highly skilled staff is here to make sure you are able to accomplish your personal and professional goals, whatever they may be. Federation Bank, your family bank.
Hospice isn't a place, it's a type of care that focuses on living. Servicing a 7-county area, the Hospice of Washington County staff of nurses, social work, hospice aides, spiritual and grief support, volunteers, music and massage therapists are able to provide free end-of-life care where the patient lives. We write wills, give consent for organ donation, but rarely is there a plan for what we would want the final phase of our lives. At Hospice of Washington County, we encourage our patients to be in charge of their healthcare decisions while maintaining quality of life.
At the Capper Auto Group, we put our customers' needs first and understand that everyone is as different as the vehicle they select. We offer new Ford, Chevrolet, Buick, GMC, Jeep, Chrysler, Dodge, and Ram vehicles in a friendly environment that puts you in the driver's seat. When it comes to service, we maintain factory-trained technicians and competitive pricing. The Capper Auto Group still believes that service after the sale provides the best customer experience. Come see the Capper experience for yourself.
Welcome back, Southeast Iowa Union Sports Talk. Hope you enjoyed the commercial. I know I did. A little break. This 2 minutes goes by fast when
doesn't it?
the sponsors that love and support this show. You just love seeing that. So remember to support our sponsors and support nobody who doesn't sponsor the show. Really, if there's we've got a lot of sponsors now, but if there's a subject where we don't have a sponsor that supports it, whether it be let's just throw out like pizza or getting a haircut. Do we have anybody getting a haircut? As you see, so. Until somebody sponsors our you're a scab a little bit because
I know.
I've been avoiding.
We should get it to the point where if we have like a pizza place, we just get like pizza every time and just sit
That's a good idea, actually. We should do it like it'll be like snack night when you have a little league team. We go to each sponsor and say, hey, you got snacks this week for Southeast Iowa Union Sports Talk. Write that down, somebody, so I don't forget.
I'll keep it over here.
We are here on Washington Live's YouTube, Washington Live's Facebook, Mount Pleasant Live's Facebook, Fairfield Live's Facebook, Spotify video and audio, and we talked about a little big school basketball. Last night was a big day in basketball, but it was even a bigger day for the smaller schools because a lot of them were in conference play. I'm going to go first here and dive into a little bit of boys basketball. Mm-hmm. Last night we had one of our most anticipated games, one that I've been thinking about since even the thought of basketball. Both boys and girls, you're going to talk about the girls, but this is Waco and Winfield Mount Union. Two of our many teams that I think are threats to go to state this year, and two teams that could be playing each other down the road to go to state. But with Waco back in the North Division, it was the first time that they'd played. I feel like I'm just reiterating exactly what happened when they played in volleyball. But these are two of the favorites in the North Division. Waco comeback win, 42-38 over Winfield Mount Union last night in Winfield, which makes it even more impressive. I think that we've said that those are the two big favorites, and I think we'll talk about Hillcrest a little bit, but they're creeping up there too as far as the North Division. Odie Shevanchuk off the bench, 18 points last night, and then a 42-38 game. 18 points is a lot of points. Mm-hmm. And Hunter Hughes had 8 points. Colton Lichty had 6. Cody Graber had 10 rebounds. And they did a pretty good job. Waco's a great defensive team. Paul Kissel does a great job with those guys. They did a pretty good job of holding the superstars for Winfield Mount Union down a little bit. Abram Edwards had a pretty good game, 9 and 4, 9 points, 9 rebounds, and 4 blocks. Cam Buffington had 7 and 7. And Jake, let's see, a couple of them had 6 points there. But the stars, the Abram Edwards and Cam Buffington, who against a lot of teams will go off for like 20 and 15, they were held relatively quiet. And I haven't seen the video from the game, but I would assume that, I don't know if it was a frantic pace or I would assume it was a pretty slower pace because of the score, but who knows?
And the thing about those teams is that they're both long, and
they are hard to score on them.
Yeah, I mean you got Buffington and Edwards who are both about 6'3". Well, Edwards is 6'4", 6'5", and then Buffington 6'3" probably.
Yeah, right around there, and they leap like crazy.
And then Waco's, obviously we see what they did in football, and they're big kids, athletic. And that looked like I'm sure that looked like because even the Winfield, even their younger guards are really tall. Yeah, they have 3 Edwards boys we talked on their team. Jake handles the ball and he's like 6'4".
Yeah, he's pretty tall too, and so And so it was a big win for Waco. That puts them early favorites, in my opinion, in the North. Obviously, there's lots to go, but big win there. Moving on, another big game last night. Keota is undefeated still, 5-0. They had a tip in at the buzzer last night to beat Iowa Valley 48-46. I have not gotten word on who tipped it in. I've asked a lot of people this morning when I saw it was a buzzer beater. But 5-0 for Keota. They've beaten Louisa Muscatine, which is one of the better teams in the Super North. They've beaten a couple of teams. 5-0. Keota has these seasons where they just get off to these huge starts. So Sawyer Stout, 18 points. Of course, you have a stout on. You got a stout on a Keota or Sigourney Keota team. You know it's going to be a good team.
Yep.
And let's see who else we got here. Cole Kindred had 9 points. Evan Vitito 7 points, 13 rebounds. So a really hot start for Keota.
Yeah, I mean, last year they were kind of one of the teams that like kind of came out of nowhere. I feel like by the end of the season.
Yeah.
Because they ended up, I believe they lost to Montezuma. I want to say.
I think they might have.
Because then Montezuma played Danville.
Ooh, you're going deep into that bracket last year.
I'm trying to think about that, but
Danville and Waco, yeah.
But Keota was one of those teams that came out of nowhere and was kind of one of those dangerous teams late.
Yeah, they are. And now they're a little older. They're always a little sneaky because the teams that we cover, a lot of them are in the Super Conference. A lot of them are in the North, but some of them are in the South. And so Keota has games in the Sickle, the South Iowa Cedar, and sometimes it's hard to kind of match up how good they are compared to everybody else. But as I said, I think they beat Louisa Muscatine earlier. And by the way, Louisa Muscatine 65-37 over Highland last night. So I think L&M and Hillcrest Academy have kind of risen to be kind of those teams right there with Waco and Winfield. Hillcrest Academy, by the way, it was against Lone Tree last night. Halftime 26-23. They ended up beating Lone Tree 78-46. 33-point third quarter for Hillcrest Academy. They're off to a really hot start. Obviously, they have Grant Bender back this year, who they have hours. They have a lot of shooters, and so I think the next kind of
well-coached.
Yeah, and they're well coached. I think the next game that should be anticipated is whenever Hillcrest plays either Waco or Winfield to see how they match up. They gave Winfield a really good run in the playoffs last year. New London, a nice little bounce back after the loss to Van Buren County, 69-58 over Danville. They got down to they had an early deficit there. They were down 17-10, in fact, so a big rivalry win for them. Van Buren County couldn't keep that magic alive, 66-36 loss at West Burlington. West Burlington looks really good early in the season. That'll be fun when they play against New London.
They had a very young team last year, so.
Yeah, and they were down. They played Mid Prairie in that sub-state semifinal last year. They had a pretty young team.
Yep.
And speaking of Mid Prairie, another undefeated team. They stayed unbeaten with a 71-41 win over West Liberty. Mid Prairie doesn't have a lot of the talent back from last year, but the kids that are back are killing it. Cameron Pickard had a 20-point game last night. Colin Miller had 11. And Ace Peck had 10. Easiest name to type.
Ace Peck.
Yeah.
Yep.
Can you imagine we have to type names like Kate Schimmelfigen, and then we have Ace Peck.
Yeah.
That's
we love
yin
those,
yang
right?
there. Yeah, you're right. So there are a couple other games we haven't got final scores on. Cardinal and Centerville.
Yep.
And then Pekin and Columbus, we haven't got those yet. So we'll try and update those online, or they should be on Varsity Bound pretty soon. But so boys basketball wise, it's a little bit of a little teaser for how the North is going to be between Waco, Winfield, and Hillcrest. I think that's going to be a lot of fun.
Yeah, well, jumping right into the girls' side, it's pretty similar.
Yep.
In some cases, we had number 15, Winfield Mount Union, rated number 15 in Class 1A, taking on Waco. It seems like no matter what, it doesn't matter when those two schools play, it's going to be a tight one.
It is
kind of like what we mentioned with Fairfield, Washington, in the Southeast Conference. But, it was a close one last night. To start, after the first half, Waco led 27-26, but Winfield outscored them 20-12 in the second, and they stay undefeated. They're 6-0. Waco moves to 2-2, and they win that one 46-39. So, what more like?
But Waco showed that they're close, right?
Yeah,
Last year, that was a lot different of a game. So,
Right.
And I think you said that on the Waco side, Katie Lichty had 15, matched Ella Kissel's point total
Both
last
had 15.
night. So,
Which is huge too, because I feel like Ella Kissel is. We know she's going to get her, get hers, you know what I mean?
yeah, of course.
And, I feel like the difference from Waco kind of coming into this year is, who else is going to be kind of one of those more kind of scoring oriented, scoring minded out of that one. So it's nice to see that. I know Grace Cole can do that just as well too. So
it's a complete different dynamic from Winfield because you have no idea who's going to lead them and score when they come in. So
they got
it's a totally different thing.
All starting five can drop 20, 15,
Yeah,
whatever.
a bunch of rebounds.
But the only other of our teams to win last night was Columbus, and playing against another one of our teams, Pekin. So Columbus moves to 4-2 with a 42-30 win over Pekin, who's zone 5. But they led Pekin led Columbus to start.
Did they?
So they led 12-9 after one, 19-14 after the first. But Columbus would bounce back in the third to win, or to outscore them 15-6 and then 13-5 in the fourth to pull out a win there. Sarah Vela led Columbus with 18.7 rebounds. Ariana Vergara added 11. So, those are some names that we see out of Columbus, and it seems like all their girls' sports. So they're doing well there. But
Last year that was one of those teams, Columbus girls, where they didn't have a super good year, but it's one of those teams where they're young and you can see like all the talent's there, they're going to get there. So I'm looking forward to seeing how much they can grow this year.
Well, and Lily Coyle, we kind of talked about her. She would be one of their better players, and she went down with an injury in volleyball, so she's not able to play this year, but doing well in the early season.
Yeah.
But next up, we got West Burlington against Van Buren. West Burlington was one of those teams that ended up losing Mid Prairie in the postseason, and we know Mid Prairie came with one game to state last year. West Burlington returned a lot of talent. They ended up winning 51-17 over Van Buren. So for Van Buren, just a really tough team. They outscored the Warriors 18-13, 13-3, and 12-4, and then 8-7 in the game. So just one of the better girls teams in the South Conference.
Yeah.
There, so
it's not very fun to go do a doubleheader at West Burlington. I can tell you that.
nope, it's not. But next up, we got Highland taking on Louisa Muscatine. Louisa Muscatine ends up winning at 41-35. Came up just short. The Huskies trailed by just two after one, 12-10. But they ended up going on a little scoring. Had some scoring woes in the second quarter, scoring just 4, and L&M scored 11. So that kind of put them over the top. L&M took the third, 12-10, and then that gave them a 35-24 fourth quarter lead, and Highland just couldn't couldn't do enough to get back on top. They ended up winning the fourth, 11-6, but just didn't have enough to get back on top, as I mentioned. But Sarah Burton with 22 points, and I think she had a double again. I believe she had 10 rebounds. I didn't put that in.
Basically a double machine.
But she's one of the more exciting players to watch.
For sure.
We're out of our area there, but. Next up, team we mentioned, West Liberty takes on Mid Prairie. It seems to be those two teams always go at it. I know it happened in volleyball this year, but Mid Prairie wins it this time 55-50. Nope. So
West Liberty wins it this time 55.
West Liberty wins it 55-50. Yep. So just edge them. Mid Prairie led 16-15 and then 31-28 after the first two quarters. But West Liberty, the Comments, went on to outscore them 14-8 and 13-11. For that 5-point victory there. Mara Jones finished 11 points, 10 rebounds, double-double for her. Kylie Rayner and Landry Pacia each had 8. So, for Mid-Prairie, it's a team, lost Maddie Noneman, who was kind of their go-to last year. She was pretty stellar down low and pretty much everywhere for them, but they got some core pieces from last year back, so... I feel like Mid Prairie is kind of a dangerous team.
I watched Mid Prairie play Fairfield the first game of the year, and their guards are really, really tough. They got some young guards that are really, really tough, too. Jovi Evans was really impressive to me.
And next up, we got Danville versus New London. Danville girls end up winning this one 57-19. New London was held to just 8 points in the first half. And then Danville went on to score 43, so they led 43-8 after that first half. And then Danville ended up taking the third as well, 8-7, and then the fourth, 6-4. So just a tough go for New London, obviously. They've been struggling here in the early season. They're 0-7. Danville's 1-3, but for New London, you just gotta keep fighting.
Yeah, that's right. Keep fighting. They had a pretty good result. They almost beat Central League the other day.
Yeah, they played Winfield pretty good first game too.
Yeah, they played relatively close.
But next up, we got Iowa Valley 6-1, 44 over Keota 1-5, 40. So Iowa Valley 6-1, Keota 1-5, but 4-point game there. But Iowa Valley jumped out to a 10-point lead after an 18-8 first quarter. And then the Eagles bounced back in the second, third, and fourth, and they won each of those quarters 15-12, 7-6, and 10-8. But weren't quite able to get make up that 4-point difference. Score 5 to win it. But
yeah, they've had you can tell Keota's a little better this year. They've had a couple of those where they played teams with pretty good records, and they played them close this year.
Yep.
I don't think they would have played them as close last year. So.
And then last game here that I didn't have any stats on, just the final score of it, but Lone Tree 5-2. Takes down Hillcrest Academy 41-24.
Yeah.
So
Hillcrest still looking for that first win as well.
Yeah, 0-5. Yep.
But yeah,
But
I think that was even. I think the Kelowna News was at the game. I believe that was pretty close up until like the last quarter or so.
I think I was looking on Twitter and I was trying to find it.
Yeah.
I found the final, but
Well, there you go.
girls action.
A little early, but you kind of see the teams that are jumping out.
You can kind
till it
of
starts.
make kind of some assumptions on
Yeah.
who you might think is going to be there in this time, but a lot of season left. So
Yeah, a lot of season left and a lot of show left. But not before we do this commercial. We got one more commercial for you. Stick tight. We're going to it's very early in wrestling and bowling and stuff. We're touch on that a little bit when we get back. So stick with us.
Protection is important, especially when you're talking about your dreams, which is why we're going to keep you covered with plans that can save you up to 23% when you bundle your home and auto. That's protection.
Family owned and operated by Andy and Sarah Ross, Ross Auto has been your vehicle repair and maintenance headquarters since 1935. We specialize in all makes of cars and light-duty trucks. With our variety of available services, let us help you keep rolling and your vehicle operating efficiently. Services include general auto repair, alignments, brakes, fuel injection, and more. Schedule your appointment today at 319-653-5656. That's 319-653-5656.
Welcome back, Southeast Iowa Union Sports Talk. If you're a fan of this show and you're watching on one of the YouTubes or the Facebook, share it, please. Smash that.
Yeah.
Hit smash. Punch that
Smash
like button. Tell your friends. There's still a lot of people that don't know we have a show.
I know.
Those people that don't have Twitter. Our Twitter at Union Sports page. Which we try and keep updated with scores and updates and that stuff. We always try and pin this show so you can watch it straight from Twitter if you'd like. So hopefully Elon's cool with that.
Yeah.
So hopefully there's no beef between
All of
him
a sudden,
and who's the Zuckerberg of YouTube. I don't know, but hopefully they don't have beef because otherwise I don't want YouTube to stop letting you show their videos on Twitter. But share it with a friend, throw it on. Thanksgiving was this Thursday. I assumed that football games weren't exciting enough. You probably threw this on a little bit, sit around, eat some turkey, watch our Thanksgiving special. Our Thanksgiving special's timeless, so that's 2 weeks ago. Go back on Washington Live's YouTube and check that out. We had a nice little feast here. Always get you always get hits on videos
some
later.
Sticks.
Yeah, I had a little breadsticks. I had some breadsticks in the fridge for later. Actually, fun fact. So I've really eaten a lot of breadsticks lately. But we're gonna talk a little about wrestling. We haven't had a full swing yet. It just started.
Yeah.
Basketball starts a little bit earlier, but. We've had a little bit.
Yeah, just a little bit.
And we've had both on the boys and girls side. Why don't we talk about stuff that happened this weekend? I think you had a couple notes on this weekend's wrestling action.
Yeah, I'll just kind of run through this here. Bear with me because I wrote a lot down here. But the Mount Pleasant, Washington, Mid-Prairie, and Waco all competed at the Williamsburg Girls Invite. 31 total teams were there. I'll just kind of read through top threes for each team. But Jaden Hausch was for Mount Pleasant was a top finisher at 135. And then Zenlin Lee and Ella McNamee both finished third at 235 and 110. Let's go down here for Washington. Jillian Langstrat and Tegan Slenchins, I think.
Oh, that's a tough one to say. Yep.
Yeah, Slenchins.
Yep.
I think that's how you say it. Both took second at 110 and 155. And then Mid Prairie, Marissa Klein took the top spot at 140. And then let's see here, the Golden Hawks also had 2 second place finishers, Grace Conaway at 140 and Ashleen Farrer at 130. Go down here a little farther, and for Waco, Braylon Wagler was a first place finisher. She finished first at 235, and then let's see here, and then Destiny Boone, Grace Fort, Riley Rice, and Heaven Stieg all finished 4th for Waco as well. So just running through there's some of the top finishers from there. Still trying to figure out the best way to go about reading all these.
Yeah, well, I'll just
there's
jump
so many
into,
of them, but
I'll jump in it because the Willard Howell Invitational in Wapello. It's been a boys event for like 58 years, I believe, and they had their first girls event. So a lot of those same names that you just mentioned, Braylon Wagler for Waco got a championship at that tournament. Also, Highlands Mackenzie McFarland won the 110-pound bracket over there, and Mount Pleasant's Ella McNamee won. She's won a couple tournaments early. She won the 105 bracket. So, as a team at the Willard Howell, the Sigourney Kyoto boys were actually the best team. They got best team of our area. They got second. Jack Clarahan won the 170-pound bracket. So, it's wild that. So they're still trying to kind of figure out what to do with the girls wrestling is sanctioned now, and there's a lot of girls that are now wrestling, and so some of these tournaments, you already think about going to the boys tournaments where there's like 6 or 7 schools at minimum, and now they're having at Wapello they had boys and girl. Wapello's a tuna can gym anyway. It's pretty small, and they had boys and girls there that weekend. So it's crazy to think about how many wrestlers are out there,
and like a lot of our we have a lot of good girl wrestlers down here.
We
too.
We do. We knew that last year at the unsanctioned tournaments.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. And here in the early season, they're picking up first place, second place, top 3 finishes. So I mean, it's exciting for them. Now that it's sanctioned too, it's like it's great that they're able to have their own meets and things like that. So
it's fastest growing girl sports. By the way, speaking of girls wrestling, Tegan Anonymous Slenchus got her first win at home the other day. Washington held a quad. And they had a boys quad, and they also wrestled against Iowa Valley for girls. Washington boys looked great. They swept through 3-0 day. They're looking really strong early on. And then the girls, Tegan's win was the only one that they could pull out. Highland went 1-2. Although there was a really good match between Highland's Aaron Boone, who was 106, almost made state last year. He defeated, let me get this name here, Luke Guzman from Highland. He's didn't wrestle from Highland last year. I think he was with West Liberty. And they fought 1-0 Aaron Boone. And we know that Boone has been ranked high in the lightweight classes. So that was a really cool match. That was kind of an early clash of the Titans. So that's a name to watch out for Highland.
And Boone was a freshman last year too, I think.
Boone was a freshman last year. He's a sophomore this year.
Exciting.
Guzman is a junior, I believe. But he didn't go to Highland last year. Mm-hmm. So if they're ever in the same bracket again, that was a really cool matchup to see. So it's kicked off a little bit. The Southeast Conference stuff is going to be really, once it gets to January, every single Thursday is going to be an SEC meet.
Looking at Fairfield, we can just run through this real quick. Fairfield, I was mentioning a couple names, was over at the Bob Murphy Invitational up in West Delaware High School, up there in, I believe it's Manchester.
Yep.
Kale McCabe took the title at 106 up there, and then a name that we've mentioned, last year, and a lot was Kason Miller took second at 152. So I guess my kind of point is that we have, looking at the big schools, the Southeast Conference, looking at the small schools at the Super Conference, and it seems like all around the board, some of the best wrestlers in the state. Obviously, we Newland has some great wrestlers.
Dom Lopez is our leading returner this year. Newland, he got third last year.
Yep. So I mean, we've got a ton of potential. Ton of potential that could make it up to Des Moines for the state tournament. So
yeah, I'm curious to see if the big schools can send many more this year when it gets to that time, because Casey Miller from Fairfield was the only one of, I think, 5 Southeast Conference wrestlers. So it'd be interesting to see if a few more of those can kind of spurt through and get to Des Moines this year.
And we had some that were close too. It came down to the final district or.
Yep.
I'm trying to say there, but it came down to that kind of final match, and some of them got third when they had to get top 2. But so I mean, a lot of our wrestlers are right there.
Yeah, that's true. And so wrestling is just starting. Bowling is just starting. Fairfield swept Washington the other day in bowling. Fairfield's got a lot higher numbers than Washington in bowling. Mount Pleasant's looked pretty impressive. The girls, I forget who they beat the other day, have got some pretty high scores. And then one more thing I was going to, and that's another sport that's just kind of kicking off. And one more thing I was going to say is Iowa Wesleyan is in full gear at this point, both in wrestling and basketball. The basketball teams look really good. Wesleyan men are already receiving votes in the top 25 poll. They swept College of the Ozarks in men's and women's basketball this weekend. The women the College of the Ozarks women were pretty good. Wesleyan only beat them by 3 the other day, but I think the women have lost only twice. The men have lost once, and tonight was supposed to be a huge night for Iowa Wesleyan women's wrestling. They're ranked number 7 in the NAIA. They're supposed to be wrestling against Grandview tonight, number 3. Just like 2 of Iowa's best teams, it was going to be a clash. It was going to be one of the coolest events they've had since they got wrestling. Unfortunately, there were some illnesses that had to cancel that. So there's no women's wrestling at Iowa Wesleyan tonight. It's been exciting to kind of watch that team grow and move up the rankings, but yeah, it's a little disappointing. I was going to cover that tonight.
Well, with maybe we can touch on Iowa Wesleyan basketball, the men's basketball a little bit. It's like look at the jump they've made since.
Yeah,
Jordan Ash is doing
7-1 or 8-1 now.
I think they're 10-1.
Oh, they're 10-1 now. Oh my gosh.
They're heading over to Western Illinois tonight, over there to Macomb, playing against Western Illinois
they
tonight.
are. That's right. They are playing against.
So
Western
it's going to be
Illinois.
interesting to see how they play against something like a school like that.
11-1. They're 11-1, and that's 11 straight wins for the Iowa Wesleyan men under Jordan Ashton, by the way, because they lost that first game. And I think that they should have had that first game from what it sounds like.
Yep.
They kind of let it slip away. So yeah, Western Illinois, they got St. Ambrose, and then a couple, the Williams Baptist and Hastings, a couple of NAIA schools coming up. So that's going to be a exciting
A lot of talent over there.
Yeah, so Iowa Wesleyan's in a real good spot right now.
Yep.
Well, winter sports that's Iowa Wesleyan's season right now. Is the winter sports. So I don't think we have anything else. Do we have anything else to talk about today, Hunter?
I don't think so.
No.
We got a busy day tomorrow, and Thursday is going to be another busy day with us going to some basketball. And
Yep. And Friday we've got some
some
Southeast Conference
basketball.
Games. Super Conference is back in
some
action.
wrestling.
I got a notification on my phone that Kentucky's quarterback isn't going to play in Iowa's bowl game. So that's nice. Also, I think 2 other top receivers are out, so I think the over-under in that game is 31. 31 points. That's pretty crazy.
Yeah,
I
that's
got
pretty
that
crazy.
on my phone during the show. So, yeah, I don't know if we're going to talk about anything else. Didn't eat breadsticks today, so hope this wasn't as boring since we're eating.
I know.
some water
I
here,
feel like
but-
we have to always be at that Thanksgiving special level now.
We really rose the bar with the Thanksgiving special. I'm telling you, if you didn't watch the Thanksgiving special, stop what you're doing after this is over. Pause it. Actually, just put it on. We have one of those lists on YouTube. Just start at episode 1 and
Yeah.
rewatch. You really want Southeast Iowa Union Sports Talk is one of those shows
like
where
a series.
you're not going to understand what's happening this episode unless you watch the last episode. So binge watch that thing, and we'll be back next week.
Yep.
We took last week off for some personal medical issues of my own, which it wasn't like a freak out thing. It was just an appointment that I had. But we will try and be here every single Wednesday at 2 o'clock. Every once in a while it has to move to Tuesday if one of us has to drive to Kansas City, right, Hunter?
Yep.
But we'll be here talking winter sports, so tell all your friends, and we will see you next week.
Next week.
All right.